Welcome to another episode of the Good Neighbor Podcast. Today we have another good neighbor on, a person who's already been on the show before. So this is a unique experience, Francois, Jaume. And today the three of us are going to chat about men's mental health. So Francois, welcome to the show. Shawnee boy.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's going to be a good little three-pack here. Let's start off why you thought of the idea for the show, Francois.
Yeah, and it was a week ago we're around Father's Day. I'm a registered psychotherapist qualifying, and I found through a reel that just scrolling through Instagram that June was Men's Mental Health Month. And I was surprised. I was like, wait, what? I had to do my own research. And then I thought, in the mental health business, something I should probably know, should help emphasize, should help be able to grow as a man in the mental health business and able to grow. So I felt a little offended or the thought of, how do I not even know about it? And then think back of me growing up, I didn't know about it, or, hearing it and what it could have been. So I reached out to Sean to say, hey, let's see if we can do something about it, right? And say, can we at least do a little podcast? At least we can say, well, we did what we could, and hopefully it reaches out to as many people as they can, being a good neighbor to let people know the information, that the importance of men's mental health, and being able to emphasize that for today, and being able to talk with you guys and your journeys or our journeys in through this process be a great ideal for anyone watching this to say, wow, you know what, they're right, whether they're in business, whether they're at home, or just a good neighbor.
That was a very nice pun, by the way. I
Thank
like
you.
that. We're going to be good neighbors, let everybody know. You'd think November would be, well, I would have thought, and it wasn't until you called me and I'm like, yeah, I've never heard of June being portrayed as, mental health month for men. And so, super happy to be doing this with you guys and share some experiences and help spread that message. So why don't you tell the listeners a little bit about your background there so we get some context before we start chatting about it.
Yeah, so as I mentioned, I'm a registered psychotherapist qualifying. A lot of people sometimes ask her what's qualifying. I am licensed. I've finished my master's. Best way to describe it is like a doctor doing the residency, just finishing college hours, registration of sorts. I emphasize on promoting and finding the right environment for individuals to grow and blossom and really experience and find their self-empowerment, whether that be through couples or families, corporate wellness, or supporting families with individuals with disabilities, different branches of what I do. But my main concept is always finding that individual approach for individuals and find the right environment for them to blossom, right? And that, ironically, is very connected to this aspect of men's mental health. I deal a lot with the aftermath of the effects of men's mental health, and how it affects a family, how it affects a relationship, how it affects kids, and it's this continuous cycle. So I think it would be very ironic in the sense too to be able to talk about it as we talk about men's mental health and the effect that it has in our communities, in our homes.
So I like to start from the very beginning and make no assumptions. Let's start right from the top. Why is mental health important, first off?
Mental health, similar to physical health, right? It improves your day to day, it improves your lifestyle, it improves your living, but it also improves the way you manage yourself, the way you handle not just difficult situations, the way you handle your life, because you're aware of it, you understand. It's like if you go to the gym and your trainer teaches you how to lift properly. It's not just to bulk up, it's for movement. It's so that when you lift the box now, you remember, oh, my posture, and you don't blow out your back. Similar concept. When you have that sense of mental health, you're now able to manage that stress. We live in such a stressful society, and it's being able to dissect it a little bit and understand and be aware of how to apply it personally.
And then a follow-up question to that would be, I think that's a great explanation of it. I mean, we've been talking about physical health for so long, right? Mental health, I think, has been talked about less than, and for a less period of time, at least from my personal experience. And then you just agree with that. So if I say, physical health to somebody and I just say those two words, they're going to think, okay, running, gym, sleeping, maybe nutrition. They already have that roadmap planted in their head because of great marketing and spreading messages and things like that. That message is spread far and wide. When we say mental health, there may be a lot of question marks in our head. So what does that, now that we understand what it is and why it can benefit us, what does that actually look like? Is there something programmable? Like in the world of fitness, we talk about progressively overloading. You continue to do things a little bit more challenging, so you push your physical barriers. Is mental health similar? Is there a recipe or a blueprint for it that we can adapt into our own lives to start growing?
Yeah, and I think for sure. And I think this is one of the areas that for me, it's this concept of the right environment. There's different modalities out there that see mental health as one point of view. But you mention it, where you start with one aspect and you can build onto it. Mental health is, there's psychoeducational, just knowing the skills and ways to apply it and how things function in your mind and your thoughts and emotions and actions are interconnected. There's the self-development and self-growth, where you're just understanding who you are, why you think the certain way, why do you feel a certain way, right? And at the same time, there's also the concept of looking into the past as to how to have things affected me and shaped me. But you can't get to the sense of the trauma or the core that some people go through. We've all gone through difficult situations in our life that have affected us, but we build to get to that point of view, right? So even just talking about it, this workshop, seminars, just to understand, oh, my thoughts, my actions, and my emotions are interconnected. What? And just being aware, you're now going to realize, oh, I'm so stressed, I'm so anxious, or I'm nervous about the situation. You start to think, well, what made me feel this way? And now you have control over it, other than your emotions or your thoughts taking control over your life. I think it's a very important concept when we start to speak about it and understand it a little bit more.
Yeah, there's a lot of people out there that don't know why they feel that way or don't think that, and so they just continue to go down that same path, and then there's lots of cases where they're ending their life, or they're making other people miserable, or they're making and continuously making themselves miserable. That educational component to it, understanding, getting to that core root of why am I feeling this way, and then taking actionable steps to train the mind to understand it better. Once you understand it better, you can then go ahead and feel more confident and comfortable being out there, figuring it out. I had a conversation with a menopause expert this morning. It's kind of not the same thing, but mentally, women are going through a, a a process that happens that is not very well known from the educational standpoint.
Right.
And a lot of women are leaving the workplace because there's not systems set up to A, understand it, and B, put actionable items in place so that they can get the help that they need. And it's through that educational component to it. And obviously it takes time. So relating it back to guys, that's why we're doing this, having an opportunity to talk about it and spread that message. So when you start feeling a certain way, you're acting a certain way, there needs to be something in place for men to understand that they can, hey, this is a moment here, light bulb moment. I should seek help. I should go talk to somebody about it, because as men, we have this dominance thing. Jeff, I'll bounce that off of you, this masculinity component to us. And we feel like we need to be strong, or we need to tough it out. And our generation before us, and in the boomers, they lived through a different time than us, and then all the way down to Gen Z as well too. So all talking about it in harmony, we're going to get a lot farther for not only getting the help, but recognizing when is that step, and that it's okay to reach out and ask for help.
Yeah, I think you touched upon several good points that you mentioned, and you talked about the different generational points. We're, when getting to the millennial, Gen Z, we're now getting to the sense of, trying to speak about it and understand it. Different generations, we're living through different things, different aspects, but the whole connection of what men's health is the typical of deal with it. Don't, rub some dirt on it. You don't cry. Crying is for girls, right? These terms that we grow up hearing, and whether we know it to be true or not, we then don't know what to do with our emotions. And I think that's the key when we talk about men's health is I don't know what emotion it is. A lot of men are, well, from what I've talked to and the men that I've worked with, are like, I feel numb. Like I don't know what to do with an emotion, right? And then when they do have an emotion, what's the usual emotion that they come out through is anger. Why, and that's the result of relationships falling apart. Oh, complaining. He's always angry. He's always angry. He's always angry. But anger, a lot of the times, is a secondary emotion. It's built up from feeling insecure, feeling vulnerable, feeling rejected, feeling unimportant, right? Feeling compared to, and all of these emotions build up to the anger because we don't know what to do with the bottom line, right? I mean, have you ever felt in a sense of, and I know I have, in many times of, I feel nervous about this, or I feel insecure. And because you want to show that insecurity, you try to show it in anger, or you try to, oh, I can handle it. And then you end up messing it up, feeling less secure and more, self-conscious about yourself, right? I know that was my aspect growing up. That's a huge aspect of my own, area and growth, was this aspect of security. And I'm, speaking up about it in terms of growing up. I don't know, have you guys ever felt that way?
Oh yeah, I mean, for me, I mean, the one thing that I talk about, first off, I haven't met a person that doesn't feel insecurity in some sense. Show me that person. But I imagine I can't speak for everybody, but I have not met one yet. And working at the addiction facility on the weekend and having my own battles with dependency, painkillers, things like that, there was a massive amount of insecurity and shame from that. As you can imagine, not only was my biochemistry out of whack because of those chemicals, but then there was also the stigmas that came with it and all that kind of stuff. So it was only through that hard challenge that I had to learn how to get to know myself a little bit more, address these things that I was sweeping under the rug. And a huge portion of that, now my life is centered around the mind. So a huge portion of that was addressing mental health. And then coming out of that 2-3 years, yeah, I mean, it's most of the things I do in my life are to affect my mind in some way for the positive. Even the gym, as much as I use that, of course, it helps the physical, but I believe it helps your mind much more than the physical, doing, temperature exposure, reading, hard conversations, walking in nature, whatever it is, all of those things, the largest net positive is my mentality. And I'll talk to Sean all the time about this. It's like, if I don't do these things, it's not that I will be, I'll just be less effective. I will enjoy my life less. That's the leading indicator of am I enjoying these experiences as I should be? If I'm not, did I miss something along the way? Did I neglect my mentality in some way? Am I letting stress take over? Those are symptoms for me that I pay attention to so that I can really get the most out of life. That's the goal. And I think it starts with the mind for me personally. So can we talk about, unless you guys want to go into your personal experiences, if you do, great. After that, I'd love to talk about some actionable steps for the people listening. There's many in my life. I'm sure as many, if not more. Francois, and I know Sean has his own as well, for people listening that maybe aren't at that step to reach out to a professional, or maybe just to complement reaching out to that professional.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think, we can go for days, right? Especially once you start accepting your experiences and who you are, you start to see things differently. And it's a whole process. And I'm just reaching over and I pull this out because one of the things, like I mentioned, this is a typical aspect of an emotional wheel. And you see the big ones in the middle, hopefully it can be read properly, are the ones people seeing it. But the ones in the middle are what? Anger, sadness, happy. surprise, bad. That's the emotions that we express in general. Hey, how are you feeling? If we get to, I'm angry or I'm pissed, I'm like, we get that. But at the end of the day, it doesn't really understand what we're really feeling. And that, I think, is the first step, to accept the little emotions of, you know what, I felt a little insecure when you said that to me. When you approach things this way, you're now expressing yourself. One, you're not containing it. Two, you're addressing the issue and you're accepting it. So you're just letting it go through instead of it being built up like a Coke on the hot sun that you just shake it, right? Imagine that every time you feel upset, you just shake the bottle or you walk by, eventually it's going to blow up in your face. And that's what we go through, right? And, and connected to part of my journey was going through the sense of, you know what? Yeah, I have felt, insecure. And what was I being insecure about? And those moments still come through, and being aware of, oh, there it is again. But you know what? I'm proud of what I'm doing. I'm proud of what I'm working through. I'm able to manage this as a father, as a husband, right? As a business owner, for those that are listening through as well. And you start to work through that process. Like we mentioned before, it's those little steps as you go through. Eventually, once you start embracing the ones at the bottom here that I'll read out in a way, it's, feeling betrayed, ridiculed, violated, jealous, annoyed, dismissive. That can come through from a misunderstanding, an assumption that, oh, they ignored me, or I felt a little left out. And what do? Oh, hey, guys, include me. What do and we have these actions to kind of cover it up. But when you were able to clarify, say, hey, you know what? You guys had this podcast. I felt a little left out. I felt a little rejected. You didn't, let's say it clarifies like, oh, no, we didn't even know you wanted to come. Right. And sometimes that gets to the bottom line in communication, because it's not just men. We live in a society that's emotionally illiterate. We don't know more of what are really all these emotions that we go through and what to do with them, right?
Well, the expressive consent for men to feel and digest and, like you said, have it pass through them. Most don't do that. They'll just keep it in and then let it fester. Then over time, other emotions come out as a blanket emotion over getting to the root cause of what it is. So, it's important to recognize if you're a man and you're feeling feelings, like, it's okay to feel. You're not numb to it. We're human. And it's important that you talk to somebody about it. Could be a family member, could be a closest friend, could be somebody of the opposite sex. It could be a sibling, anybody, as long as you're talking to somebody about it.
Yeah.
That's
even
where
another male itself, right? And just to get that, hey, I'm feeling this way. You feel that way too, right? And experience it, right?
Something that was important for me is you don't know what you don't know, right? So I'm walking through life, whatever it is, I'm experiencing life, and I know nothing about mental health, but I know things aren't great, or there's kind of red flags coming up in my life that are telling me maybe this isn't the way it could be, but I can't even identify the problem yet. When there's so many options for so many things in life, and lack of knowledge is a big part of this. How do I know this is mental health? Like, how do I even know to reach out to somebody like you? I know that I'm not comfortable inside, and maybe that's all I can say. I just know that I wake up in the morning, I'm not jacked for the day, and maybe I've been living this way for 5, 6, 10, 15 years. Who knows? Right. Is this a mental health thing? Is this a digestive issue? Like, am I sitting too much? We hear so much from the social media platforms, all the watching that we do these days. I find it difficult just to even identify the problem. And how do you find a solution for a problem you haven't identified before? So maybe you could share with the listeners some symptoms, some red flags of, yeah, this maybe is a mental health thing. So now that they know that, oh yeah, I resonate with that stress in some sort, now I can reach out to someone like Francois, or at least start digging online. There is a lot of great educational pieces online. I think you got to weed through a lot of shit, but at least I know now, okay, I've identified my problem. I can start seeking out solutions. Can you give us some red flags, some symptoms that people may be walking around with for ages that they may not even consider anything to do with mental health?
Yeah, for sure. And I think the biggest one out there, and I'm gonna, as a taboo of sorts, but it's burnout. Burnout has similar, criteria of depression and anxiety. A lot of people say, "Oh, I'm feeling depressed, or I'm anxiety," and which can be, but we ignore the burnout, which means, you're feeling overtired, you're not getting rest, your sleep is affected, whether you're sleeping too much or you're sleeping too little, or you're just not feeling refreshed, is areas of, okay, something's happening. Like you mentioned, it could be dietary, it could be other things, but this is where it's all interconnected. If you're not sleeping properly, you're more irritated, which means these little emotions are gonna, man, no, you're gonna be annoyed all the time, right? You're angry, you're kicking the dog, and the literal terms, or the figurative terms, or anybody like trying to help you, and you're like, leave me alone, and you're just annoyed because you're tired, and because you're tired, you're not gonna eat right. You're gonna go for the fast aspect, right? This is just one area to kind of go through and how it's all interconnected. Because you're tired, you're going to say something that was hurtful for somebody else, and now they're going through that system, and you're going to not want to process the difficulty of differentiation because you're not cognitively there. You're strained. It's like you're not going to go to the gym when you're tired, when you're weak, when you're sore, when you're sick. You don't like, I'm not feeling like going, I'm just going to stay home. Eventually that goes a week, right? That goes a month. Similar aspects. So that's number one, is realizing what is charging you and what's uncharging you, what's like taking things away. Once you start to acknowledge those areas and say, okay, I'm really focusing on and realizing I'm draining more than I'm charging, that's when you start to realize, come to see a therapist or other professionals. Do your roundabouts. I went to the doctor, it wasn't sleep. Sleep was normal. So what's happening, right? I went to this, it wasn't dietary. Eventually, that's where the last call for mental health professionals of, listen, I've tried everything, I don't know what it is. And a lot of the times it's burnout. You are taking on too much more than you can handle because of the pressure. And men have that, families, wives, relationships, this persona that we have to be strong and present ourselves even more. So I would, when you're feeling this bit of a reputation of continuous cycle, nothing seems to work, habits, things you used to like and enjoy, all of a sudden like, you know what? You're a soccer fanatic or a football fanatic, and now that the World Cup's going, it's like, you know what? I don't even care for it. That's when you actually say, you know what? I should talk. That's a really like alarms going off when your interests are starting to be affected, to talk to somebody. And that's when you start to explore, well, what is it? Is my mental health affecting my sleep, or my sleep affecting my mental health? Both are areas to look at, but those are, ways to start to concern and see if kind of the cycle, being aware of stopping and saying, where am I? And being able to stop through and feel, especially for men, when you feel, okay, I've been going through it for so long, nothing's changed. So let me talk to somebody. Doesn't mean there's a problem mental health in aspect. It could just mean helping you resolve it.
Yeah.
There's certainly nothing wrong with going to talk about it. I mean, if you're just unsure in anything, for the longest time, I had that in me. Like, I'm not, I'm mentally strong. I'm pretty mentally strong, but I'm only human. And for the longest time, I always told myself I would never go to therapy, because if I went to therapy, it was like I was lesser than myself. I had this thing in my own head, and I think a lot of men have that in their head, and you got to get that out of your head. It's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to feel uncomfortable. It's okay to feel what you're feeling, and when you go talk to somebody about it, the liberation that occurs after. I had an issue, personal issue going on, and I didn't know how to approach it. And for the longest time, I went to go seek advice to the wrong people. And so that's when I knew I couldn't keep doing that anymore because it was just exasperating the situation. So I ended up going and seeking professional help. And in one session, I got what I needed. I talked to one other person about it, educated them, and then I was able to move forward after that. The problem ended up rectifying itself through understanding the place of where I needed to come from in my conversation. Once I understood that, I was able to formulate my words in the right way to navigate my way through the situations I needed to, and way better for it. And that only took one session. And, most of the time, from what I understand, and maybe you can enlighten us, you don't want to see the same person all the time for the rest of their life. So therapy is not a just because if I admit myself to the loony bin, I'm going to be stuck there forever. That's not the case. No, you want to be able to offer those solutions and give them the tools so that they can manage it on their own, whether that's once, twice, sometimes a little bit more than that. But eventually, you don't want to keep seeing them.
Yeah, I mean, I'm in the business of seeing people to never see them again. That's what I tell. Sometimes people think like, oh, you're just maybe saying this because I'm paying you and is it money or whatever. I'm not in that kind of business. But you're right. I want to make sure you are equipped enough. And a lot of the times people, oh, I feel better. Okay, thanks, bye. And I'm like, I just showed you the tool belt. I didn't even show you how to use a hammer or what it does or, all these things. Like, you see a person that does framing or construction, the way they use a hammer is like an extra limb. Like, they use it to pick up things and use things. I'm like, so what? That's what a hammer is for, or how to nail. Like, and you realize, I thought it was just for a nail, and it's beyond that. Like, that's really what the sense of psychotherapy is. It's like, I understand it. I mean, whenever you're ready to go ahead. I want you to go build your own house. I'm here to support you as long as you can. But you're right. It's there, but it's also the sense of making sure you're ready, right? To not, because when you leave early, now you're like, oh, I try to put in, the mirror behind me and I threw a hole in the wall, right? Which is fine, right? And being able to approach it. But yeah, the end result is, I wish you well. Hope you have a fantastic life. Check in once and twice, or let me know how things are going. But not just when things are bad. You can also come in when things are going well to, this is working. I'm not sure how, or I'm not sure why, and being able to kind of use that in a way to support and be able to grow. That's also useful as well. You don't have to come in when your life's falling apart. And you mentioned the aspect of weakness and that it's okay to be weak. I always mention it and present it as, in your weakness is when you can really become stronger. Because, we're talking about the gym and exercise, and I know that's an area that, kind of fits in with a lot of men aspects as well in terms of strength. What's the first thing you go to the gym and you try to build onto? The area that you feel is weaker, right? If your legs are jacked, you're going to start working on your arms. You're going to start working and building other areas that you acknowledge need the time and effort that need to grow. Similar in the area of mental health. The areas that you feel are maybe weak can be the areas where you become stronger. And you utilize that with your strengths, and you realize, wow, it's easier to manage, right? It is easier to go through all that.
It is very important to acknowledge for those who are listening that all of this should never, you should never wait until shit hits the fan. The second you think that there's an issue, do not let that fester. You need to go talk to somebody right away, because a lot of people think there's a big misnomer that in therapy, I have to wait till I have a problem before I go. And in fact, it's way more beneficial when you can kind of early detect, if possible, and go talk to somebody beforehand, because oftentimes a lot of things can be avoided.
Yeah, and I'll add to that. I was talking to a chiropractor, what is it called? Barry Core Wellness Center this morning, Dr. Robert Staton. And although not psychotherapy, he gave me this great metaphor, because I kind of bump up against chiropractors a little bit. Although I admitted on the show, I'm like, I know this much about chiropractor to this much being available. I had a couple of bad experiences, had a lot of good experiences with a physiotherapist. I'm like, okay, I found my spot. the idea of coming back to a chiropractor over and over and over again, which seems to be common to many people. But he gave me the idea. He's like, we realign your nervous system. People think we're just cracking and aligning bones back into place, but you realign your nervous system, which affects your brains and all that. And just like our engine, he's like, you have a car, right? You have a car. Do you regularly go in and tune up your car, or do you wait for it to become damaged? I said, no, I get my oil changes regularly. I do my, 50,000 kilometer maintenance, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, that
Right.
avoids the problems down the line and keeps the longevity and overall health of your car. Yes. Yes. Why wouldn't you do that with your body? It's like, I'm not saying to come in to the chiropractor once every week. Maybe it turns out to be once every month, 6 weeks. But if you're feeling good and that thing that you did with the chiropractor led you to feeling good, why wouldn't you continually do that? Like the gym. I don't go to the gym when I'm broken to heal and then stop once I'm healed. I go to the gym because it makes me feel great. So I go to a counselor. Good, bad, neutral, whatever. Sometimes I see him once a month. Sometimes I'm like, listen, I'm dealing with a lot right now. Can we see you in 14 days rather than in 28? But I go to him regularly and I counsel. It was one of the best pieces of advice, a counselor, get a counselor. But I've been doing that for years. I go to group talks all the time, at least once a month. I have my one-on-ones, and sometimes we just shoot the shit. I'm like, man, everything's lining up pretty good right now. Let's just talk about it, whatever. I can just air it out. Sometimes he just listens. We've had many conversations where I've just been able to share whatever I want to share with this person that I trust. I know I'm safe. It's a comfortable environment. And I walk away feeling a little lighter. Other times he drops these truth bombs on me that I'm like, man, how did I not see that? But these things that I incorporate in my life, it's someone would say, the cost, adding more and more and more and more. I'm like, listen, man, it's to each their own for sure. But there's certain things that I've kept in my life because they make me a better version of myself. And I don't think personally there's anything more than addressing how your mind feels, because it seems to be the foundation to everything. If my mind isn't right, I don't treat Sean well, the family well, you well. I'm not thinking as well. I'm not as immersed into my studies. All of those things are a cascading ripple effect from my mind being not as good as it could be. So it's like, if that is for me, like my North Star, mind is right, everything else is better, then, a conversation with a professional once a month, that's the bill I have to pay to get that. That's a no-brainer for me. No brainer.
And
people don't think about it that way.
A lot of people have, even you may not have 20 sessions, but a lot of people have basic insurance coverage. So that gives you at least a couple of sessions for you to test it, like it. Hey, this is what I'm going on. Like you mentioned, trying it out, test, and then you realize, oh, I like it. I can invest it. I understand the monetary aspect. I get it. And there are certain aspects, but there is help out there that is affordable, that is, accessible. Like you said, knowledge is power. You go to a professional and they can refer you to, hey, there's this access locally in your area. Want to say Ontario 211, if you're ever in need or help, if you're listening to this, just dial, just email, just call, just text, 24/7 available. And they can help you with, I don't know, so many different avenues. It's confidential and they can connect you with services near 111. I always tell that to anybody. If you're in anything, it's, ways of getting connected and being able to help. And also thanks for sharing that too, right? You're on live, you're recorded, it's going to be up on and everything. And for you to share that, hey, I need a counselor too, or I see them however often, that's a big step. And I, appreciate that in the terms of what we're talking about, of what we're doing, I think. And, wanted to say thanks, because maybe it's what whoever listened to you for so long is like, wow, Jeff's going to that. Maybe that makes a difference, right? Or Sean, or Francois, or all these aspects. So I do thank you for sharing that and experiencing that as well. And the truth bombs sometimes land.
Yeah. I mean, I look at it this way, man. I have no idea how long I'm going to be here. I want to tackle life. That's the metaphor in my head, as hard as I can. Get the most out of it as possible. And if I'm struggling with something, I can either not address it, learn it on my own, or talk to an expert. And what I found for myself is that time is the most valuable resource. Money will come and go, and I can make more of it. I can't get any more time. So by talking to an expert, I condensed the time it takes me to learn it and see the results. So I look at myself as like this guy in the center with like this little village, this little army of experts around me, helping me soak up the most out of life. And experts in my life have become invaluable mentors, experts, teachers, whatever you want to call them. There is a literal army behind me pushing me forward in one way or another. And that just works for me. I just can't do everything on my own. I have more weaknesses than strengths. I'm good at what I'm good at, and that's what I do. I pretty much ask or pay everybody else to help me with the other shit. And that's what's worked for me. So I try to promote experts and seeking out help as much as humanly possible. Sean and I talk about this all the time. We have a pretty large team. Many people are stuck in their fear. They don't want to ask for help. Why? I get it. Rejection sucks, but most people don't reject. And it's just a no. Move on to the next one. But yeah, it's been instrumental to me to be around people that know things that I don't know. Period.
Some of the most difficult conversations, some of the best conversations and the best outcomes happen on the other side of difficult conversations.
Oh, yeah.
And we can't grow unless we're uncomfortable. So it's like golf. If it feels weird, you're doing it right.
Yeah.
So if it feels like uncomfortable and you don't feel like doing it, that's when you should say, that's when you pick up the phone. That's when you're reaching out to somebody and saying, I'd like to come in. I don't feel like it, but I'd like to come and sit down and talk about it. And then you do that once, and how you'll feel if you got the right person in front of you, then you'll thank the advice given, and you'll do it again. And then you'll talk about it and spread the awareness. And that's what we're looking to accomplish here. Yeah. For everybody who's listening, is to educate people. The more educated you are, the better you understand things. The better you understand it, the better you're going to be able to articulate that, which means you're going to spread the message in the appropriate way to other people. The more message spreading that we can do and educate and teach people about mental health, and about trying to live your best life, taking care of the North Star, your mental health, is just going to make the world a better place.
Yeah. And I, seeing in terms of times and everything where we're going, and you mentioned a truth bomb. So here's a truth bomb for you guys and for anybody listening. It's a bit of what Blossom Lives represents in the terms of the right environment. If you have a tree, let's say, dying in your backyard, and we'll keep it community since we're the good neighbors. You have a neighbor that the tree is just horrendous. It's dried out. It's like dead, pretty much. It doesn't do anything, just looks horrible. It affects the whole street, right? It doesn't fit the persona. Eventually, you call an arborist. They come check it out, and they realize, you know what? There's something in the soil, water, whatever it is. They focus on fixing the tree. It's not completely dead. We can manage it. We can support it. That tree is now starting to grow, starting to blossom, starting to develop, starting to, be stronger, leaves. What is that going to bring? Well, now the squirrels, birds are now nesting into it. Pests that were around, maybe mosquitoes or so, are kind of diminishing because there's the predators or things that are keeping them at bay. And now from that tree, you've created an ecosystem. That ecosystem is now able to flourish, and it's able to grow, and it's able to develop. And now it's affecting the whole community to realize, wow, I'm seeing blue jays in my street right now because of that, in essence of that tree. That is the aspect of mental health. It starts with us individually, for men, mothers, corporate, whatever it may be. But when you apply it for you personally, and you start to blossom and grow and apply these concepts, you're now affecting everyone around you. Because You're now going to work happy, you're going to your home happier, or just able to process difficult situations, teaching others. How do you do it? Here, let me show you. Let me give you that advice. And then in that turns, you're now creating an ecosystem, an environment that's just now blossoming, other trees and other aspects. And now you've just changed the whole community by changing that one tree. That's the one, the way I see it and the way I apply it with anybody that comes in is kind of my perspective, but that is the essence of mental health. So
look at us just fixing one man tree at a time, eh?
One man tree at a time.
It's a really good point, though. We're all connected one way or another. With that tree dying, it's affecting the whole community. With the tree blossoming, it's affecting the whole community. I can't live my life isolated from others. Like, there's just no way to do it. Even sitting in my house alone because there are people out there that love me or care for me, that's affecting them too. If I don't answer the phone for weeks and weeks, they haven't seen me in weeks and weeks, they're probably going to be stressed to heck. So one way or another, every human being, I believe, has a very significant ripple effect, probably well beyond their line of sight. And whether action or inaction, we are affecting us and others around us. So we're getting near the end here, gentlemen. Something that I wanted to do is I'm curious about both of you. I have mental health practices that I'm pretty rigid about in my life because they just provide so much outsized return to the effort required to invest into them. I'd love to hear, I'll share some of mine maybe at the end. I'd love to hear what Sean's doing, what Francois is doing. Like, what do you guys do individually at home outside of going to the expert? Everybody now that's listening to this episode knows the value of finding the expert that's the right fit for them. But what can we do at home? What can we do in our day-to-day? Because I can't see an expert every day. So
Right.
what can I do to bolster myself, to make myself more resilient, handle stress more, be more calm, that parasympathetic nervous system, rather than fight or flight, stress to shit all the time?
Yeah, I have two things. And again, it depends on who you are and like what your interests are and what you like. I'm really big on disconnecting. So unbeknownst to anybody other than Jeff, because he's my partner, I had a absolute horrendous week last week, and I was having crazy mental health breakdown. Jeff talked me off the ledge, uses counseling to really kind of reel me in. And then on Friday, he kind of let me go and said, like, go disconnect. And that's what I did. I didn't think about work. I didn't think about anything else other than just being here in my house. Went to the Eric House concert on Friday. That certainly helps. Music is a great way to disconnect.
Oh, yeah.
And so, I was closing my eyes, just looking up, just like taking a breather while they were jamming out hardcore. It was the best show I've ever been to. So that also helped. It's not like you're going to go to the best show in the world every time. So that might not be a great example, but just music in general. I played video games for like 7 hours in a row. I think I got up to pee like 2 or 3 times. My good friend Brody came over and we played a retro Pokemon for like 7 hours. It was a great way for me to disconnect. Video games for me is a great way to disconnect. And the second thing that I do, if that is not an option for me, is to get out in nature. So, being outside, it was a little bit later at nighttime. It's super quiet in my neighborhood. Just sitting outside in my gazebo with the lights on at nighttime and you could just hear the bugs and the crickets and stuff like that, or going for a walk, going fishing, going camping, going for a hike in the trail, just being out in nature. There's a serenity to it. I talk a lot about it in my podcast. I have a lot of guests on the podcast that explain just that about, hey, what do you like to do for fun? I like being out in nature. Well, I wonder why you're so happy all the time. Nature does wonders for the psyche and for the mind. So those would be my 2-3 little things that I do to kind of keep myself aligned.
Yeah, no, and I love the aspect that you mentioned with nature. I love to be out and about. For me, I mean, especially as a young dad with 2 young kiddos, spending time with them a lot of the time just resonates. Just literally, I'll build the forts and do all the crazy stuff, like just let my inner child out, because I haven't like
Love it.
the kids want it, right? But it's really just you, and being able to do that is my number one.
Don't lie, Francois. You like building forts, okay?
I love building forts.
I'd be in all over that. Julie loves it too.
I get the chairs, I get every blanket, and I get rooms and everything like that. Wife sees it sometimes and it's like, oh gosh. And I'm like, oh, the kids wanted it. But yes, I wanted it. And I make sure it's big enough for me to get in there and everything. And they're trying to tear it down. I'm like, no, it's got to stay up. So that's, letting my inner kid out. And what greater than to have the 2 little kids show you how to do it best, or, trying to get them to like, hey, let's explore this, flip over this rock or whatnot. Right. So that's my number one, I think. One of them, and it's been kind of constant, especially as an entrepreneur and a business owner and a professional. And I talk about burnout, and that's ironic because I always tell people, take care of yourself, and ironic, and take time off. But now as a dad is, well, I'm either at home or I have to work, and then at work, I have to work. So sometimes I feel a little hypocritical where I'm like, I should probably take some time. When I start feeling the super tired, taking a nap, I've realized during the day, I can see like, oh my gosh, I'm losing an hour and a half, or let's say 2. But when I wake up for it, I am so much productive. I am so much connected. I am so much involved with my family, with work. And so I've realized the value of, if I need to take that 1 or 2 hour nap, or sleep in or whatever it means to, or take that time off to rest, to recharge, seeing that value is like, you know what? No, it's not just, oh, I'm wasting time out of the day that I have to do this, this, and this. I can't do that if I don't take that time, because I can do the 10 things after, because I'm, refreshed and able to go. So I would think, yeah, letting my inner child out and resting, which is kind of what little kids do all the time. They nap in between and then they're bouncing off the wall. So, yeah.
Jeff, go ahead. We got 3 minutes left.
Yeah, I'm just going to touch on a couple. I mean, the people that know me, it's really just the one. I like doing a number of things. I sometimes go nuts with the morning routine and all that, but really the one, my kind of trinity for life, is movement, nutrition, sleep. When those 3 things are aligned, I know I'm giving my body I'm stacking the deck in my favor to have, body, mind, soul, whatever you want to call it. I'm pushing the physical, which helps the mental and the physical. I'm feeding it what it needs. I'm allowing it to rest and recover. And then I go hard during the day. Like Sean and I really work, and there is stress involved with that. And we do long hours. And someone may say to me, you take 2.5 hours in the morning to do all these things before you get to work. I said, it's only because of that I can now handle the 12-hour day and then be kind to my parents and friends after that, even if I just got my ass kicked. And then most importantly, I've earned my sleep at night. One of my mentors talked to me about your sleep is something you earn, especially in your older years. We can sleep a gazillion hours when we're young and developing, but as we become adults and we have these thoughts rolling around our head all day, every day, for me, if I don't give that food, sleep, and movement, then I don't sleep that well. So I really kind of test myself. Did I do what I was supposed to do today? Before I go to bed, I reflect on the day. That's a really good mental practice for me. Usually meditation is in there somewhere as well. And then I know when I wake up in the morning how I lived the previous day, unless I'm sick or something, but I don't get sick much. If I slept really well and I'm like ready to tackle the day, I don't need to snooze or do any of that early in the morning. I know I lived yesterday well, and I just try to repeat that. But really, movement, nutrition, sleep are the things that keep me resilient to stresses and happy. I want to be happy as much as I can, even when there's sadness and all that. I want to be positive. I think it's a choice for me, and I want to get the most out of my days. And giving my body, mind, what I think it needs are those 3 things: movement, sleep, nutrition.
Love it.
Yeah, you guys are great, man. Any last thoughts, Sean, Francois? This is the first one we've done like this, which is great. Men's mental health is so unbelievably important to me. When you guys brought up the idea, I said, yes, we got to do it. And we will have many more episodes like this of things that we're interested in, messages that we think are important to spread. But any final thoughts from either of you guys before we wrap?
Thanks for having me. It's been great. And, to connect, getting to know you guys a lot more. You guys found what you guys each need through your own journey, but you were able to go through that journey. So that's, anybody listening, is start the journey, figure yourself where you are, what's going to be good for you. Right. And you heard 3 different examples that are completely different in their own way, because we're applying our own self, right? There's no right way or wrong way. Just be you. So that's kind of my final thought to the listeners and anybody watching.
Yeah, my final thought is, now that we're starting to grow this platform, have these types of awesome conversations, and spread those messages that need to be spread. I would encourage anybody listening to the show to reach out to us with what they would like to hear us talk about in the future. We're always up to engaging with our listeners and our audience, to bringing content forward that is appealing to people, that is interesting to people, and including sometimes, we're busy doing what we're doing. We don't always get to think of these brilliant ideas like yours, Francois, in talking about men's mental health. You can visit our website, booking@gnpmidhurst.com. We're out here ready to hear your thoughts. Great conversation.
And before we wrap, I don't think this would be a complete show if we didn't plug the psychotherapist who's on with us to address mental health, business, and contact. So if people are interested with what they heard today, man, you would be the first point of contact. That seems logical as heck to me. So how do they get a hold of you, man?
blossomlives.org. That's the area. You can see the services that I offer. Like I mentioned, general psychotherapy, individual couples, families, teens. If you're a business owner and you would like to create this aspect as well in your business and your coworkers, I do corporate wellness workshops and seminars, and I again find the right environment for you. And I support families with individuals with disabilities, coaching parents, and being able to unite them. And because that's a difficult aspect to manage and deal with alone, over 10 years of experience with that. And you can see all of that information at Blossom Lives, or follow us on Instagram, Blossom_lives. And I service from Aurora all the way up to Barrie. So that's half of York region and Simcoe County. So if you're listening to this, consultation, get to know what you need help with and how I can refer you or support you. And I would love to be part of your journey, even if it's just a small conversation. Would love to say hello. So thank you, Sean and Jeff, for this opportunity. And you guys moving so quickly, be like, get me in here and talking about this before the end of June and everything. So thank you so much for what you guys are doing. This platform, it's growing tremendously. I see you guys online. So kudos to you.
It's a couple of real people having a real conversation in a real setting.
That's it, man. Can we have a men's mental health virtual high five before you guys go? Put it up there. You guys are great. Great episode. Thanks for the expert advice, Francois. Sean, thanks for plugging this. Thanks for connecting, guys. And looking forward to doing this as many times as we can. Have a great day. Yeah.